Good morning, my bio students. Hope all is well with each of you. Today we are going to go over our classification notes, which is chapter 17. As you can see, part of it is kingdoms, and the other part is classification. So why in the world do we have to do this classifying thing? Well, there are over 30 million organisms on Earth. It would be kind of nice if we could put them all into some kind of systematic order to help better organize all the information about the diversity of life, like their habitats, their relationships, their body structure, how they eat, their mobility, and anything else that we might want to classify about them. A couple of definitions. Well, by definition, a classification is a group of organisms, or objects for that matter, based on a set of criteria. But we, since we are scientists, and for your journal for the day, taxonomy is a discipline of biology primarily concerned with identifying, naming, and classifying species based on natural relationships. The first to ever think about classifying organisms was the Greek philosopher Aristotle. He first divided all organisms into plants or animals. So first, animals, and then plants. And then after that, he did the animals into presence of blood or no presence of blood. And when they were broken down into the presence or absence of blood, he actually was pretty smart because this is almost the way we classify vertebrates versus invertebrates. But I do have a question for you. How come he talks about presence of blood, no presence of blood? How about no bacteria or protists? If you were thinking correctly, if you think about his lifetime when he was around, bacteria wasn't even a thought or even found yet. Then after they were put into blood or no blood, he then classified them as land, being on land, land dwelling, being more in the water, or being more in the air. With plants, he divided them into size, small, medium, large. Small, which would be like herbs and flowers, medium, which would be like shrubs, and large, which would be like trees. Aristotle's classification system was good for his time frame, but it did pose many limitations as more organisms were discovered later on. It wasn't until the 18th century that a Swedish naturalist named Carolus Linnaeus brought in Aristotle's classification system. His is the first formal system of classification and still remains fairly valid today. He came up with what we call binomial nomenclature, which gives each species a two-part scientific name. Bi meaning two. So you can see here the blue crab, which maybe some of us eat, especially during the summertime. Its scientific name is Calonicus sapidus, and you can see it is two different names. So, how exactly do we write this scientific name? Well, the first word is always the genus. Then, after that, it must be capitalized. And then the second word is what we call the species. Sometimes you might hear it called the epithet. Species or epithet, same thing, but it is lowercase. Finally, both names need to be written in italics or to be underlined. For us, if you write in cursive, that's the same thing as writing in italics. But if you print, then that means you must underline it. But you can't do both. The scientific name, again, is a two-word name that's specific to only one type of organism. This kind of helps with confusion of common names. What I mean by this is different areas of the country or even the world call organisms by different common names. For example here, the mountain lion. Some people might call it a puma, a cougar, a wildcat, or even a panther depending on location. I know where I grew up in Ohio, we call a groundhog a woodchuck. Or if you ever think of those little bugs that when you dig in rocks from the mud, some people call them pill bugs, some call them potato bugs, some call them roly-polies. They're all the same thing, it's just what we call them as a common name. So that's why the scientific name is very valid, because every single organism has his or her own scientific name. Again, the blue crab, Calcanus sapidus. Alright, pencils down. Let's see if we can match the scientific name with the pictures of the animals shown. What the heck? Alright, so first one, Quercus phellos. Which one do you think it might be? Ah, it's a type of oak tree. Here's an easy one. Homo sapien. You should know this. That's right, the skeleton, that's us. Remember, Homo is a genus, sapien is the species name, and it's underlined since it was printed. How about Ursus arctos horribilis? Ooh, it's the bear. If you think of Ursus minor or Ursus major, if you know anything about astrology, they are talking about bears. Desmondus rotundus. Ah, it's the bat. Quercus alba. Oh, acorn to represent another type of oak tree. Oticilius virginianus. Ooh, it's the deer. Thamophis sertalius. Ah, the snake. Aedes japonicus. And the only one that would be left would be the mosquito. Okay, so we know that all organisms have a two-part scientific name. What is the first word again? Ah, yes, genius, and it is always right. It's capitalized. It is followed by the species, which is always lowercase. And the two names must be either right, underlined, or italicized. However, this two-part scientific name wasn't enough, and we had to create more. Scientists created an 8-level classification system based on taxons, which is just a group of organisms to be classified. It starts with the most broad category, and it ends up with the most specific. Okay, so first is the most broad, which again is our domain. Then we come down to kingdom, which is just our related phyla or our divisions. Then it's phylum, which contains related classes with animals, or sometimes they might call it division if we're talking about plants or bacteria. For the most part, we'll always say phylum. Next is class, which contains related orders. Next is order, which contains related families. Then family, which contains related genera, which means your genus. Then genus, which is a group of species that are closely related and share a common ancestor. And then finally, the most specific, your species or your epithet name. Okay, so let's practice a little taxonomy on us. Us as humans. I know it's not here, but does anybody know what our domain is? Alright, don't make fun of my handwriting. That's right, we belong to Eukarya because we have nuclei. But as kingdom, we're an Animalia. Phylum is Chordata because we have a backbone. Our class is Mammalia because we're mammals. Order, we are primates. Family is Homidae because we are upright, we're bipedal. Genus is Homo, and species is Sapiens. And again, as you can see, when you write the genus and species, that's your scientific name, it must be written correctly. Okay, pause me for just a second here while you guys pass out the classification journal. It should have cats and fish on the top. Students, this is to be completed into your journal books as a B for the day. Push play when you are ready to go for it. Alright, classifying living things. The more classification categories two organisms have in common, the more closely they are related. For each pair of organisms, write the names of the categories they share. So go ahead in your journals and make 4 categories that each of them share. For the top 2 pictures with that wildcat and the kitty, and then for the bottom 2 pictures with the fish and the kitty again. Please pause me while you all do this work. So, which one was easier? Which one was harder? Why? The more closely related two organisms are, the more categories they're going to share in common. Thus, this is why we needed some kind of classification system, and we have our 8 levels. Okay, let's put your journals aside for a few seconds. Sometimes when organisms are very similar, like the birds you can see here, scientists make or use something that we call a dichotomous key to help them decipher amongst the organisms. A dichotomous key is a chart that has a series of choices, usually only 2, between alternate characteristics that you must choose from to ultimately determine which organism it is. Let's practice some. Alright, so if you look at this first bird here, our choices. The beak is relatively long and slender, or the beak is relatively stout and heavy. Would you consider this long and slender, or stout and heavy? I would definitely say it's stout and heavy. So where do we have to go? To number 2. The bottom surface of the lower beak is flat and straight, or the bottom surface of the lower beak is curved. Well, that looks pretty straight to me. So we have identified that bird as the Geospiza. Alright, flip your journals over and you should see another dichotomous key. You are to determine both a common name and scientific name for each organism numbered. I know you can probably already identify all these organisms without using the key, but please just play with me and practice with me. I will do only one with you. So if you look at picture 1, does it have 2 or 4 functional legs or no legs? Well, to me it looks like it has 4 legs, so we're going to go to number 2. Alright, so is it an organism without wings, or is it an organism with wings? I don't see any wings, so it must be 2A, the dog, or the Canis familiaris. Go ahead and complete the rest of me, but please pause me so you can finish. Okay, you will be completing a spider dichotomous key shortly for homework, but I need us to continue with notes, so we'll come back to this. Some essential questions. Why is Aristotle's system of classification not valid? How does Linus' system of classification work? How do you write the scientific name? List the taxon categories in order, all 8, and then some of our vocabulary words. Classification, taxonomy, binomial, nomenclature, taxon, species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, division, kingdom, and domain. Please start section 2.